Welcome to the Liberating Joy in Learning podcast. I'm Brina Beckstrand, and today we're continuing the season where we build on common principles found in other sources. To do that, in this podcast, we'll be discussing the book Adjusted Sales, What Does This Make Possible? By Kathi Laughman. I love this quote from Laughman's book. What we are considering is the fundamental need to move beyond positive thinking to possibility thinking. We must be able to look at every side of our choices. There is always another question to consider. The other question is also what quite often delivers us the greater return. It is where resiliency lives. I love this distinction between positive thinking and possibility thinking. It's like beyond how to win friends and influence people, right? It's possibility.
Right.
Considering possibility, presumably good ones, is so much more inspiring than just positive thinking. Also, this helps us understand how important it is to wonder well. Don't settle for the choices you've considered in the past. Allow yourself plenty of time to wonder shamelessly so that you can grow in new and amazing ways. So how does the difference between thinking of possibility thinking versus positive thinking influence your ability to wonder shamelessly?
Well, I think the main difference is possibility versus positive kind of infers action.
Yeah.
And if you could be the most positive thinker in the world, but you could be just sitting on your butt and not doing anything because
right.
you're all happy. I'm positive. Yeah, well, you're not. That doesn't benefit you. That doesn't benefit anybody else. Mm-hmm. But if you're thinking about possibilities, what could I possibly do with what I'm learning? How can I, I'm going to learn to play the guitar. I could possibly go on the road. I could possibly perform. It inspires you to find an outlet for what you're learning.
Right.
And it inspires you to go in a direction. Positive thinking is just, you're happy. You feel good. Possibility, in my mind, means action, motivation. You're moving forward with that learning, and you're taking it someplace.
Right. I love that you have a totally different take on that, because in my mind, I'm thinking positive thinking, you've already figured out what you want.
Okay.
Possibility thinking is, I want something great, but it's going to be a surprise, right? Like It's going to be something out there I haven't even thought of.
Right.
It's going to be all of the good things that I have, but even better.
Right.
Like that's to me what positive thinking feels limited to me.
Right. Well, and I think we're kind of saying two sides of the same coin.
Sure.
Is that it implies moving forward? Is you're not staying in one place.
Yeah.
You're moving forward with what you're learning.
You're right. So Laughman continues this explanation of how to wonder about possibilities until you get to what you want to claim. Know your true objective or desired outcome from the change. Your why. Keep asking until you find it. You cannot stay on track if you don't know where you really want to go. It starts with the question of why. Why? You continue to ask that question until you get to an emotion. Then you've arrived at what you really want to achieve. I think it almost like contradicts what I just said about not knowing, but really she's talking about keep asking why until you get to what you really want, right? So this intrigues me, wondering until we get to an emotion.
Right.
That's interesting. You get till you get I don't know. I have to really think about that. I love it, but I don't totally understand it.
Yeah.
So how do you know when you've wondered enough?
Well, I've got two thoughts, but specifically to that question, it kind of goes back to the last podcast we did, where we talked about the brain. We got into some science about the brain.
Yeah.
And about how when you get to a point where you're not moving forward, your brain, you feel restless. And I think when you're wondering, when you've wondered enough, your brain is going to say, okay, we're tired of sitting here.
Yes.
We need to move forward.
Yes.
And I think that, to me, that tells me, okay, I've asked the question. I've got the question I want to answer. I've got the question I want to pursue to find the answer. Let's get going.
Yeah. Now there's a sense of I don't want to ask why anymore. I want to go toward this now.
And maybe it's not a question of why. It's like I've got at my office on my desk. I have a little hand note that I wrote down, and the question is the quote is, "What's the big idea?"
Right.
And so when as a designer, what's the big idea? 30,000 feet. What's the big idea? What are you trying to accomplish? And you have to always keep that in the back of your mind, even when you get down to where you're 5 feet versus 30,000 feet. You still have to keep that in the back of your mind. What's the big idea? Why am I doing this design, or why am I going this direction? It's always good to remember why you're doing something. If you get so excited you forget the why, then you're going to get distracted, and you can veer off from your intended path.
Right, you keep that, but you don't keep thinking about different possibilities. You focus in on one.
Right, exactly.
Yes, and we've talked about this before.
Yes.
You always want to be wondering.
Right.
But at some point, you stop wondering about lots of different options, and you focus in on one.
Exactly.
Right. The other question, how do you know when you've arrived at what you really want to learn? And it's a similar question, but it's a little different.
Yeah,
do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think again, I think you get it. It gets back to that positive versus possibility. Is you're excited about, oh, that's a cool idea. I like that. Yeah. What are the possibilities if I pursue this? What am I going to learn? What are what could possibly happen to me if I pursue this?
Yeah, you want to know the answer to those questions, right?
Exactly. You want to know the answer. You want to know what is the answer to the question? What's the big idea?
Right. I love asking questions, but there are some questions you're like, I don't really care about that answer.
Right.
So I'm going to keep asking until I get to a question that I really want to know the answer to. Okay. So Kathi Laughman also says, your beliefs are like a lens. They go beyond any technology man has ever developed. Your belief lens filters out, distorts, softens, and expands. For us to empower our full potential, it is paramount that we understand and take responsibility for our beliefs. Like, amen.
Right.
What else do we have to say? Stretching is where our beliefs about the truths of life that apply to our learning are defined and highlighted for us so that we can use them.
Right. Now, furthermore, she says, your beliefs create your vision. They determine what you see and what you believe. Beliefs create our mindset. Mindset creates our patterns of thinking. Those thought patterns create our actions. From our actions, we get our results. Lastly, our belief system must be alive and growing, a living part of who we are. And I love this concept of our belief system being alive, implying that it's always deepening our understanding. So what beliefs have you improved lately that help you learn and grow better?
So I just finished a book called Mind Your Mindsets, and we'll get to that one soon. It's coming.
Yes, it will.
It's coming. But I love the concept of thinking about the thoughts that we have are like the stories we tell ourselves.
Right.
That has really intrigued me. So, what story am I telling myself?
Right.
So that's a belief that I've improved lately. That's an understanding about the world that my mind is constantly telling myself stories. Right. And some of them are good and some of them are not as accurate or helpful.
Right.
So that's mine. How about you?
Well, I don't have a specific belief that I've improved lately. I just think I really appreciate her definition of how important a belief system is. It creates and how it needs to be dynamic, in that you're constantly refining it, you're constantly sharpening it, you're constantly honing it, you're constantly expanding it or deepening your understanding of your beliefs. Mm-hmm. If you don't have a belief system, then you're just wandering. You don't have a goal, you don't have a vision, you don't have a path. Mm-hmm. And so I think for me, strengthening the belief system that I have through whatever I'm studying, whatever I have wondered about and have decided to follow, it ultimately goes back to improving myself and improving and deepening the belief system that I have.
Yeah, certainly there's a place for that.
Right. Now, Laughman explains a possible problem with our growth is that, like our learning blockade of halting development, if we are not moving into action, we are held back by some form of fear. And sometimes action is the only antidote. I really appreciate that. That's very powerful. Mm-hmm. To overcome this, she explains that our true source of power comes when we are in action. Now, I thought about writing this book a great deal, but it didn't create energy or become a reality until I began putting words on paper. That was what Laughman said. Mm-hmm. Power becomes a reality when we act. In physics, kinetic energy is the energy of motion. A good way to gauge our actions is by the power they create to help us learn and grow. So what power in your learning have you created by choosing an action and working with resistance?
Well, lately, I have some issues with my elbow. As we get older, everything seems to hurt. And it doesn't just hurt for a day, it hurts for a year. Anyway, and I saved a whole bunch of elbow videos. I love Qigong. It speaks to me.
Right.
And it wasn't until I actually started doing it that it started actually helping me. I can look at videos all day long, but until I started doing it. I also love the concept that, I love to ride a bike, but it doesn't bring me that peace until I'm actually on the bike and going. Right. And so I love how that's such and I love biking, but it really
Right.
doesn't give me that high.
Right.
I don't get benefit from the elbow videos until I actually do
Right.
the action.
Right. Yeah, that's to me that's one of the more powerful things that she has said is that you're wandering shamelessly, your goals, however you want to say it, won't become reality if you don't move. You have to be moving. Now that doesn't mean you have to actually be up, moving, taking steps around. You have to be progressing forward.
Right.
You have to be doing things that will stretch your belief systems. As we were talking about that, stretch your understanding and help you grow. And that doesn't happen unless you're moving. I like the correlation with kinetic energy.
Yeah.
No, it's worthless if it's not there. If it's not moving.
Right. For me, I think everyone has kind of their action that keeps them moving in life.
Right.
For me, it's journaling. So when I'm stuck with Learning Liberated, I don't know what to do next, I just start rambling.
Right.
And that just kind of gets the juices flowing so that then
Right.
I can find something productive to do.
Yeah.
So sometimes you don't need to find something productive to do,
Right.
Quote unquote,
Right.
but you need something to
Something,
do
yeah.
that's headed that direction, even it's a
Right.
little teeny tiny step.
Right. And I think getting back to the kinetic energy type thing, there is a benefit to having something where you actually are moving.
Yeah.
Like I really enjoy, we both enjoy riding bikes. We both go for walks. I really enjoy playing disc golf. I'm not good at it. I'm not good at it at all. But getting that, even if it's just for an hour, going out and playing a short 9-hole course, it's a pain to get in the car, drive half an hour to get to the course, walk to the first tee. But then once you get going, you start throwing, get loose, and there is that rush of having your body move, working out the whatever, if you want to get into negative and positive energy, all that kind of stuff. I'm not going
Or the
to.
Endorphins of throwing the disc
Right.
or whatever.
but it helps. It does help you reset and get a fresh outlook on life. Just having a little bit of movement.
Yeah.
Even if it's only a couple days a week, it's very important. I think that helps you get a new perspective on what you're working with.
Yes.
Well, that wraps up our discussion of Adjusted Sales, What Does This Make Possible by Kathi Laughman. That helps us understand learning principles of wondering, stretching, and working better. If you have other thoughts about learning from this book, we'd love to hear them. And as always, if you have questions or comments, message us at learningliberated@gmail.com or on our Learning Liberated Facebook group with any questions or comments. And again, if this episode spoke to you, share with someone else that might enjoy it. Bye.
Bye.